Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and X. And for the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. And that's just a sampling. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. For laptops, mobile phones, and tablets, download the Roku app. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fists. My name is Frank Lotierzo, part-time writer, full-time observer, and I will be auditioning for SeatGeek commercials next, joined by co-host Jack Hirsch, former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Come on, Jack, get it together. You there, Jack?
You hear me, Frank?
I can hear you. I'm here, Jack. Jack's frozen. In the meantime, good evening, Joe Bergman. How are you? That was a good card for $26. Knock 3 times if you want me. Yeah, I think he's working on it, Joe. Jack. All right, there he is.
Okay, you hear me clearly?
Yeah, Jack. I'm glad I don't have to look at 2 of you. Mac had 2 of you up there.
I knew I was going to my backup system. You have to understand when something goes wrong with my system during the show, maybe you should panic, maybe you shouldn't. Think of it as the backup quarterback being called in. Okay, it's that type of situation. I got my backup system, and I'm on it now.
Oh, I thought you meant I was the backup, because if I'm the backup, I'm Tom Brady. You're Matt Castle.
Well, I'm not talking football right now. I mean,
All right, Jack, we had a great weekend of boxing, 7 fights. Most of them were good to outstanding. We're going to cover that. We're going to cover the passing of Greg Haugen. We're going to talk about Tank Davis fighting. Today's Jimmy Ellis's birthday. And thanks to my friend Jack, I got to see the special on Smoking Joe Frazier Saturday night at 8 o'clock. There were parts of it I loved. Parts of it weren't so good. But, Jack, where do you want to start off? You want to start off with the card?
oh,
You want
yeah,
to start off with the main event?
the big show. There's one thing I knew that was going to happen for sure, even though my predictions were off. Something unexpected, shocking was going to happen, because when you have 7 fights, they're not all going to go according to form. Even if you pick the winners and get the right winner, one of the results is going to be completely out of the box. So we try to anticipate what's going to happen, but it never comes out exactly the way we thought it would. I mean, my biggest regret of the 7 fights was my prediction that Martin Bakole would be a man of destiny. He would just get off the plane. It would be the biggest story in boxing. No training. He hit Joseph Parker, shot on the chin, and knock him out. Thinking Bakole, oh, well, he's an absolute monster. He'll have enough to fight a few rounds and have a few big bursts.
But, Jack, we didn't make a pick on that fight because that fight was still Parker and
But I did. I got it come clean. I went with Bakole, even though I didn't say it on the show. For the record on this show, when the fight was made, I thought Bakole was going to knock him out. He was going to be one of these subs. But I'll have to admit, as soon as he entered the ring and I looked at him, my mouth dropped. He didn't even look like a fighter. He looked soft.
Well, I didn't make a pick on that fight once Bakole was in. I picked the boy to beat Parker. When Bakole was in, I said on the post the day of the fight, I said, I always miss with Parker, but I think Bakole's too heavy, but I didn't make a pick either way. The pick that bothered me was I was going to take Callum Smith over Buatsi, and I took Buatsi. I let a friend of mine kind of push me into that a little bit. And Buatsi has no urgency. He's a very frustrating guy to watch because if he would have let his hands go and fought with any type of urgency, he might have defeated Callum Smith. But Callum Smith dug down, clearly won the fight, and I'm glad he got the decision because
fight, Frank. It was a close fight.
But he clearly won, Jack.
Let's not make it out like Callum Smith won decisively. He won like 7 rounds to 5. It was,
But Jack, he clearly won the fight. There's no case for Buatsi.
I know.
No case for Buatsi. And Jack, the rounds that Buatsi won, you kind of were giving them to him because you think, I got to give him some because he just didn't do enough. He didn't let his hands go. He just fought in a trance. I would have been going crazy if I was in his corner, where at least Smith was digging shots to the head and body, threw some nice left hooks the whole night. And I thought he clearly won the fight. Was it close in rounds? Yeah, I'll see that. But there was no question that was Callum Smith's fight.
I think we would have picked Callum Smith if we thought we were getting the Callum Smith of a few years ago.
Exactly.
But
right.
Get to the point where we think they're long in the tooth. And usually when we think they're long in the tooth, they really are long in the tooth. But sometimes they can get back to the form they were at a few years earlier. It does.
And he had the right guy to do that with, Jack.
And Callum Smith got back to his old form when he was more up and coming, and it showed in this fight. And Callum Smith said beforehand, this is it with me. I mean, I don't like to make excuses, but I've had a great camp and so on. And it's a hard-earned victory. Now what I see for Callum Smith is this. And this is what I'm predicting His Excellency does. I'm going to I'll call him Turkey, but somehow I don't like the way Turkey sounds. I call a guy Turkey. It doesn't sound good. His Excellency sounds great, but he's putting on great fights. So he's earned the phrase His Excellency. I think there's going to be a third fight. There will be a third fight, Beterbiev and Bivol. It's a natural. They should fight a third time. On the same card, Benavidez, David Benavidez against Callum Smith. Benavidez probably wins, okay? And that would set up for him to fight the winner of the rubber match between Bivol and Beterbiev. That's natural matchmaking. That's exactly what I see happening.
Well, that's a good card. I hope that happens. But look, Smith looked good, Jack, but I think that he had the right guy to look good against, because what bothered me is when Buatsi did fight and let his hands go, he didn't miss with too many shots. He just didn't do it enough. But if Callum Smith is next in line for Benavidez, it's a good payday. If he gets lucky, it's another payday. So I think that's a great semi windup on the Bivol Beterbiev rubber match. But let's talk about that fight, Jack.
I just want to disagree quickly. Callum Smith won the fight, Martin, but he lost it. He won it.
Okay.
He went out and he took the victory. That's the way I look at it. Kudos to Callum Smith.
But I also think it was a little easier against a guy that was complacent. But I'm not gonna take anything from Callum Smith. So we see this. We saw that the same. All right, Jack. Let's talk about the main event. And I have to get this off my chest.
We're going to get the undercard too after the main event.
Right. I thought that Beterbiev would start faster. I thought that he could improve by starting faster, and he did. Bivol fought the exact same fight. But, Jack, I have to tell you this. After the 5th round, I thought that Beterbiev, and Joe, you're right, we texted each other. After the 5th round, I thought that Bivol was going to fight to survive. And, Jack, the way he came out, and from the 6th round on, using his feet, he initiated the exchanges. He landed nice, clean shots. He got out of the way for Beterbiev, and I just thought he controlled the fight the last 6 rounds of it, and he probably won 5 of those, maybe 6 of those, and I thought he was dead in the water.
Bivol did not win the last round. You could argue
he didn't win the 12th. I'll give you that. Okay.
11. You can argue. Beterbiev won rounds 4, 5, and 6 in rounds 12. And then if you want to argue, he didn't win another round outside.
I had it 7-5.
I had it the same way for Bivol. I think the big difference between the first and second fight was this, Frank. Beterbiev got tired the second half of the fight. He got tired. Last time it was Bivol that faded. This time it was Beterbiev. Yeah, Beterbiev put a desperate rally on in the last round. You know, he had to know he was losing the fight, or at least felt it was up for grabs at the very least. You'd never know what's going through a fighter's head.
Well, his corner was really harping that they needed the 12th round.
Even John Scully, I forgot his words, said something to the effect, you know, not using these exact words, you got to knock him out. You got to show, you know, it wasn't just winning the round at that point.
Right.
He got tired. And even Bivol said after the fight, I was tired, but I could tell he was tired too. And that's where Beterbiev is at his best. He grinds opponents down because he has such a high motor. And the guy with the high motor was getting tired himself. And Bivol put together these beautiful punches and bursts in the second half.
Okay, so here's the question, Jack. Because we saw the exact same fight. Beterbiev knew he had to start faster. I said that he would. Now, where things changed a little bit was after the 5th round.
After the 6th round. Beterbiev won the set, came on rounds 4, 5, and 6.
Okay, after the 6th round. You're
wrong.
right.
Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I had it 3-2 Beterbiev after 5 rounds. It was after the 5th round.
Maybe it was after the 5th. I'm sorry.
But my point is this. Here's the point. Bivol really didn't do anything to change that. Could this be a case where Beterbiev at 40, that's where we saw the age come in, and maybe he just approached the other side of the hill, and that was about it? Because Bivol fought the exact same fight he did the last time, only he was able to execute better this time because during the second half of the fight, he had more initiative and it didn't look like Beterbiev had quite the same motor as he did the last time. So I know he was in shape. Maybe that age of being 40 and maybe those 24 rounds actually took more out of him than they did Bivol.
I think I'm hopping back to what I said a little while ago. I just think it's a case that Beterbiev didn't have more stamina than Bivol. He always has a higher motor than anyone he fights. In the second half, he was moving forward, Beterbiev, the same way he was at the first fight,
but not as effective.
And he wasn't throwing heavy punches. And I thought Bivol was brilliant the second half of the fight. I think it was better than he was in the first fight as far as putting together, combinations and bursts, moving around side to side. And you get the feeling they're going to have a rubber match. And the only thing that's safe to predict, it'll be a very competitive fight. And
they match up well.
Probably go the distance. And if we're to make a prediction now based on the last fight, we probably say, yeah, Bivol will go with him to win the rubber match because Beterbiev, you just mentioned his age. After the first fight, you were asking, Frank, fairly so, can Bivol do anything better than he did the first time? And that's why you lean towards Beterbiev. Now we're going to ask the same exact question in reverse. Can Beterbiev do anything better, in the rubber match?
See, I think he tried this time, Jack, and I just think it took more out of him than it did Bivol. And if in the 24 rounds they fought, I think Bivol won both fights. The first fight was very close, and I could see a case that he didn't. But I think Bivol has gotten the better of the 24 rounds that they fought. And going forward, after a brisk pace fight like that, I'm just more confident that Bivol can be the same guy out next time, where I don't think Beterbiev can be.
Is this a possibility, Frank, that maybe Beterbiev lost a tiny edge in the second fight because he got the decision in the first fight, and in his head he may have thought, I wasn't at my best, I still won. I'll do a better job this time. Of course, he trained, he got in shape, he did all the right things. But did he have maybe that extra little bit of motivation that Bivol definitely had?
It's hard, Jack, for him to have the same motivation because he won. But he did say immediately after the first fight, he was not happy with his performance, even though he won, and he wanted to do better. I just think it's a style matchup, and the fact that maybe Beterbiev is on just approaching the other side of the hill, where he's still a factor and would probably beat everybody else out there. But the wheels of Bivol and the hand speed just might be a little too much for him right now.
I get the feeling too, in the long run, meaning the next few years, Bivol is still going to be around as a major player and possibly establishing himself as an all-time great light heavyweight champion.
Jack?
I see that happening, him not being beaten maybe the next 3-4 years and going through some tough fights. But of course, he would have to turn back the inevitable challenger, David Benavidez. And of course, the rubber match with Beterbiev.
Let me say this. I think it's conclusive that both Beterbiev and Bivol would have been a factor in any light heavyweight era. Do I think they beat Michael Spinks or Bob Foster or even Asad Muhammad? I don't think they beat Spinks. I don't know about Foster, but they're in the game they could win the title on any night because Bivol was that good of a boxer and he's complete. And Arter is very strong, and I think he could hang with anybody, and it depends on the style. Just like Joe says, if Bivol wins, can Benavidez beat him? I'm leaning no. Joe, I agree with you. I think Bivol matches up better with Benavidez than Beterbiev does, because Beterbiev it's a physical fight. And if he loses a little of that physicality and that strength and stamina, he's not the same. Where Bival's not going to fight force on force with Benavidez. He's going to box him and turn him and pick his spots.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. Good for Bivol. He's going to have big fights as long as he can win. He'll have a rubber match with Beterbiev. Benavidez will not duck Bivol. So that's 2 big fights in a row. Forget Canelo. I don't want to hear any talk about Canelo.
Jack, we're never going to see Canelo fight those guys. He's going to fight Crawford.
He's going to fight Bivol no matter what.
Jack, this is what Canelo is going to do. He's going to fight Terrence Crawford.
Well,
If
first in May.
he'll win that fight.
Yeah, of course.
But if by chance he loses to Crawford, he'll have a rematch and he can fight him again. Maybe Crawford will retire, but that will be there. And this is Canelo's way of swerving Benavidez and a rematch with Bivol and Beterbiev. You can say, look, I'm fighting a pound for pound, maybe the best pound for pound fighter in boxing. You can't put me down for that. So I think he may even be looking that there might be 2 fights with Terrence Crawford in the worst case scenario. But he's never going to go in there with either of those guys. And here's another thing I saw somebody say today, and you got to give this to Bivol. He has defeated 2 undisputed champs in Canelo and Beterbiev. And Jack, you can make that face, but Canelo was the best 168-pounder when he beat him.
Frank, because you're using one of the dirtiest words in boxing, undisputed. Why don't you just say he beat 2 world champions? The next thing you're going to do, Frank, is tell me Joseph Parker deserves a chance at a world title, so I'd like to see him fight Daniel Dubois. That's the next thing I'm going to hear out of your mouth.
No, Jack, you're not going to hear that. You're close, though.
Dmitry Bivol did not win the undisputed title last Saturday. He won the World Light Heavyweight Championship of the world by beating the champion.
He beat the guy who was the presumed best guy, and nobody disputed going into that fight last Saturday night that Beterbiev was the best light heavyweight in the world. And when Bivol beat Canelo, nobody disputed at that time that Canelo was not the best 168-pounder. So I'm saying undisputed. There's no dispute. He beat them both when they were the big fish in the division. And as far as what you said about Joseph Parker, you're close. But no, Parker doesn't deserve, he shouldn't fight Dubois. He should fight Usyk because his last 3 fights, body of work, that's the fight he deserves.
Absolutely, 1,000%. He deserves a legitimate world heavyweight championship fight. And, and I'd like to see Usyk fight him. Usyk already beat Daniel Dubois. Right. I don't blame Daniel Dubois for not fighting last Saturday. Apparently he has some type of illness, so it's not.
No, nobody should fight unless they're 100%.
But Dubois was on a good run, 3 good wins in a row. Joshua before that, Hergarvik, and then big baby Jarrell Miller. So had he beaten Parker too, that would have been 4 nice wins in a row. That would have earned him the rematch with Usyk. So that would have been fine. But it didn't happen. But Parker's the guy on the run. And, I want to give Parker his credit knocking Bacoli out. Everyone is now saying, Bacoli was in pathetic shape. He had no business fighting. Even Eddie Hearn is saying that. And we hear all this. You can't have a free pass in boxing, Frank. If Bacoli would have knocked Parker out, everyone would have been hailing Bacoli as being so great. He didn't do it. We got to hold it against Bacoli in some way, shape, or form. Let me tell you, Bacoli, for all we know, he could be a future world heavyweight champion. Who knows? Who knows for sure? But one thing I do know, he's no longer going to be considered a monster like King Kong, the way he was going into the
Not until he scores another impressive knockout.
No, the image of him getting knocked out by Parker is going to
That was some shot, Jack. Right on the top of the head. I've never seen that before in boxing. And you know it was a serious shot because early in the round, Parker ran him into a direct right hand and Bacoli shook his head as if he didn't even feel it. And then he throws that overhand right, hits him on the top of the head, and it was like, boy, his legs did this spaghetti dance like I've never seen.
And did we build up Bacoli too much based on beating Jared Anderson?
Yes, Jack. Every heavyweight is overrated coming off an impressive knockout. So yes, we did.
I overrated him.
So did I. Everybody did, Jack. Calling him the boogeyman. I called him the boogeyman.
The most feared fight in the division.
But you could tell, even in that first round, Jack, as much as he was in terrible shape, you could tell when he let those punches go. There's power there, and you don't want to be caught at the end of them. And for a guy that big, he gets off pretty quickly.
Frank, and his handlers have come under a lot of criticism. I know Eddie Hearn was criticizing his handlers for allowing Bacoli to fight. I'm still not against him having.
He made $650,000.
I mean, and he got underpaid. I don't know why they settled for $650. They badly needed a big name opponent, and he would have. I mean, they could have gotten someone else. There was some talk, Lawrence Okoli, but Bacoli's name in there made it an exciting matchup beforehand.
And he's still going to fight Epiajaba in May.
Oh, right. And the point is this. His Excellency, they're going to remember he came in on short notice. He'll get another opportunity at some point to redeem himself. But his image of being King Kong, it's never quite going to be there the same way.
No, he has to reestablish that. He gets credit for taking the fight on short notice, and Parker gets credit for asking for him and performing the way he did. You know what I was thinking, Jack? Is Parker this era's Jerry Quarry, where we look at him where he can't quite beat the elite guys, but Quarry beat Mac Foster, Shavers, and Lyle, and then you have Parker beating Bacoli, Zhang, and Wilder. And all three fights he went in kind of as the underdog.
Yeah, I mean, I give Parker a lot of credit, but it pains me to say it. You have to break down the opponents one by one. And the circumstances kind of favored Parker. Zhang, we build him up based on his 2 stoppages of Joe Joyce.
Who beat Parker.
And so Zhang is an old, slow heavyweight. Parker won a close decision over him and got dropped twice, okay? And he caught Deontay Wilder probably at the right time. Wilder's been downhill, and beat him.
But Jack, going into all 3 fights, most people were picking Parker to lose. But he was seen as a stepping stone the way Quarry was for Mac Foster and Lyle and Shavers.
But look at what the guys that Quarry beat, what they maybe did afterwards. They still had strong fights. Quarry beat Floyd Patterson. Patterson had the great fight with Jimmy Ellis. He beat Oscar Bonavina after. Ron Lyle.
But the Patterson fight, Jack, was controversial, just like Parker's fight with Andy Ruiz. And then he had Parker had a stinker against Joe Joyce, like Quarry did Chivalo. I see a lot of parallels in their careers, that they're both tough. They both have a good chin, and you really root for them. But in the biggest spots, you feel like they're not going to do it. And against the best guys, like nobody would pick Parker to beat Usyk. And I don't know, would anybody pick him to beat Fury? I don't think so. So it's like I see a lot of similarities.
Eddie Hearn's been going around saying, like it or not, Anthony Joshua is the biggest money man in boxing of the heavyweight division, blah, blah, blah. He might.
Him and Parker would sell if they fought again.
Yeah. I mean, because people are intrigued by the name. But Anthony Joshua is not the fighter he was early in his career. Early in his career is really, really good. He was awesome early in his career. He's not the same guy. Fury, he's not the same guy either, even though he has a lot left. He fought Usyk 2 close fights. But I guess it's, boxing's entertainment. It's name value. Hey, listen, if we could sell Tyson against Jake Paul, we could sell 2 big name heavyweights at any point, But
Jack, can you see my point where I can just see where Quarry and Parker have a lot in common?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that.
Neither one of them do anything great, but they're grinders. They fight everybody. They don't duck anybody. And when they're supposed to get creamed by the killer knockout puncher, Foster, Lyle Shavers, Bacoli, Zhang, and Wilder, they show up really big. But then when they fight that guy that's in the middle, like a Dillian White or a George Chuvalo, they don't do so good. You know, Quarry had the bad fight with Chuvalo, the stinker with Ellis. Parker had the bad night with Joe Joyce. But yet when Parker got a title shot, you know, he came up small the way Quarry did. I mean, I hate to say small because Quarry was against two all-time greats.
Yeah.
And Parker was against a guy that some people thought had potential greatness in him, and it didn't pan out. But look, hats off to Parker. He did a great job. And I'll tell you what, there was another heavyweight fight. Cabal against Zhang, another guy who went into the Lion's Den and fought a great fight, a smart fight. I love how he backed up and he made Zhang use his legs in the first round. Then once he was a little gassed and his hands came down, Jack, he kept on stepping into him with those rights and lefts to the body and to the solar plexus. And I felt sorry for Zhang at the end, Jack. They were giving him oxygen in the corner after the fight.
Yeah, we didn't think Zhang was going to win the fight. We didn't pick him to win, you and I.
No, but I didn't think he'd get whopped like that.
But again, we kind of were built into the hype in a sense. After his two stoppages at Joe Joyce, we thought this Zhang is a monster.
He can punch with that left hand because he landed one and he dropped Cabal.
Right, that he could knock down buildings with his punch. And we thought he could be a threat against anyone. And then he fights Joseph Parker, who boxed him. You know, lost a relatively close decision, but scored a couple of knockdowns. And then, you know, he beats a shot Deontay Wilder. He stopped him. But this fight, he looked like a tired old man in there.
Jack, he looked so ponderous. And just everything was a labor. He has nothing but basically a right and that left cross. He's so easy to hit to the body. And obviously we saw that he doesn't like it to the body. And Cabal nailed him with some great shots. Showed heart, Jack, because he got hit with a big shot. And he got up and he took it. I mean, there's a guy not many people are talking about, but I'll bet you if Cabal fought Parker, we would end up picking Cabal to win.
If he fought Parker, I'm not that sure about that. I would lean towards Parker.
I think I would take Cabal. But Jack, I'll admit I'm terrible with Parker. I get him wrong all the time. I am wrong on him all the time. The only fight I think I got right was that he would beat Ruiz and lose to Joshua. Other than that, I haven't done real good with Parker.
That would be a very tactical fight, but both guys on a nice run of success. I don't think they should fight one another.
Parker deserves a title shot.
Right, exactly.
And Cabal's right behind him.
Yeah, Cabal, they could see what they do with him. You know what you could do? You could let Bacoli get in shape and let him fight Cabal. You know, their next fights. I'm good with that.
Usyk's only going to fight once or twice more, Jack. So that division is going to open up.
That division will open up
when he's gone.
I don't see any one particular fighter, taking charge of the division. If I had to predict one guy, probably Daniel Dubois. I think is the most likely candidate.
Well, he's young and he has the tools.
27 years old. Fury is basically a fight at a time guy. If the money's right, he's going to come out of retirement and fight Joshua because the money will be there. He'll do it for the money. Then he'll retire again. And if they offer him an incredible amount of money, then maybe another fight. That's the way Fury's going to operate.
All right, Jack, let's talk about the fight that had everybody psyched up besides the main event. And that was Ortiz against Madrimov. That was really the only fight we disagreed on. And the fight kind of went the way I thought. I thought the pressure and aggression of Ortiz, who showed he's a little bit better defensive. He's not just a puncher. I thought that would be the difference. And I think he had Madrimov on the run most of the time. And he looked better against Madrimov than Crawford did. But I think that was just a matter of styles. The Swarmer will give the counter puncher trouble because he takes his time and space away from him. And that's exactly what happened in that fight. Madrimov made a good stand, just couldn't get enough done.
Well, Madrimov was winning the fight early. You know, he's doing well.
He got out to I thought he won the first 2 rounds.
But Ortiz's nonstop pressure, you know, we took control of the fight in the second half. And, and Madrimov just had a hard time staying with him. You know, he fought back hard, Madrimov.
He tried, Jack. He did.
All these rounds he was losing, he was highly competitive. But Ortiz just had that little bit of extra drive. That was the difference.
Yeah, I think the pressure took a little bit out of Madrimov and made him rush his shots, and he couldn't get nothing on him. I'll tell you the fight I would love to see, and we may see it, but probably not too soon. I'd love to see Boots Ennis and Ortiz fight.
Well, Boots is fighting on April 12th in Atlantic City.
In Atlantic City, right. I would love to see that fight, but something tells me Boots is going to stay at 147. And, Jack, by the way, did you see how big Terrence Crawford looks? Terrence Crawford will never, ever fight at 54 again.
Yeah, you know, it's going to be interesting. The fight's in September. So it's enough time for Terrence Crawford's body to maybe adapt to being a bigger guy. It's not like he's signed for fighting in 2 months. He's putting on all this weight.
I think he's doing it gradually and getting acclimated to his body.
It can be done. Listen, you mentioned Mike Spinks before. He went from 175-pounder to all the way up to like 200 pounds to fight Larry Holmes.
And he did in what, 3 months?
Yeah, and I think he actually weighed, you know, the fight before that, I mean, 2 fights before that, he weighed 170 and a half
against David Sears.
Right. And,
yes.
I remember Mackie Shilstone told me when Spinks got on the scale, they lowered the scale. They had the weight lower. They thought, oh, maybe he's coming in about 183, 184, 185. And he told me, you should have seen Holmes's eyes bug out when they kept lifting up the needle, you know, when it got to 200 pounds. But it can be done, but it has to be done, you know, safely, properly. And you get the feeling he's doing that. But is he going to compromise speed or whatever? I don't know.
Well, that's what makes that fight interesting. And it looks like he's doing it the right way. And boy, Jack, that's going to be interesting once the build-up comes for that. So we'll never see that again. So, all right. Ortiz looked good. We know he is definitely the future. I wouldn't write Madrimov off. That was a great fight. Adams and Shirzan, hard fight to watch. Adams, to me, looks like a poor man's Emil Griffith. And how do you say his name? Shiran?
Yeah, it was, you know, both guys were trying. It wasn't an exciting fight.
I dozed off, I think, during that one.
Yeah, I mean, certain fights I watch, I score, but I don't take my own scorecard seriously.
I didn't score that one.
I'm not bearing down like I'm a regular judge. Like, for example, I scored Bivol over Better Beef 115, 113 because I was fully watching it like I was one of the judges. I really was bearing down and concentrating.
Same here.
So I feel very comfortable to say that Bivol deserved the fight, and I would argue with anyone who said otherwise. But in this particular fight, because Adames was moving forward, maybe people were thinking he was robbed and so on. It wasn't that. It wasn't.
I thought Jack. I didn't score it, but I thought he got the better of it. He just was busier. I thought he outworked him, and I thought he deserved the decision. I was a little surprised they had it a draw.
Sean Porter, you know, thought Sharif there won the fight.
I know, Sean. You know, I love Sean Porter, Jack, but he said a few things during the night that I disagreed with.
Well, I guess
I actually felt I was more in line with Sergio Mora.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. The one analyst who gave something, you know, the craziest thing was George Foreman years ago on HBO. He's talking about Hector Camacho. and he called Camacho a devastating puncher. So, George was always good for, a chocolate.
When George commentated, Jack, he was unreal, because sometimes he would say the most ridiculous thing that you could ever imagine, and other times he would turn around in the next second and say something absolutely brilliant. And he was frustrating for me to listen to do the commentary. But Jack, let's talk about the other star that night, who literally put me to sleep, and he makes Floyd Mayweather look like Tommy Hearns, and that's your boy Shakur Stevenson. He's hard to watch, Jack. He's just not fun to watch.
I mean, he did what he had to do. I mean, Padley hung in there. He was fighting. He was fighting a guy who came in on 4 days' notice, and Padley was 15-0, only 4 stoppages, but he's competent. He's competent.
Okay, Jack, he's competent, but Shakur's supposed to be all world.
Shakur should have gotten him out of there a little sooner. It shouldn't have taken till the 9th round. I mean, I kind of.
And it was the body shots that got him, nothing to the head.
Right, exactly. 3 times.
He makes Mayweather look like Hearns, and I'll tell you what. I don't think they're going to fight because they're buddies. But what's Shakur going to do with Tank? He can't hurt him. Tank can hurt him. I don't know who I may favor Tank in that fight. And you know what? Give Keyshawn Martin a little bit more experience, and he'll give them. He's in there with both of them. But after watching that fight the other night, if Tank doesn't get far behind, I think he beats Shakur. Shakur has no punch, and he's a little physically stronger than he looks, but he was hard to watch. I thought he was disappointing. I really was.
I wasn't disappointed. He won every round, and he got the stoppage. He tried to get it earlier. In all fairness, it's not like he carried Padley for the fight, but that's Shakur. He's what he is. I mean, he's what he is.
We won't see him fight Tank.
Listen, Pernell Whitaker wasn't the most exciting fight, and you probably enjoyed watching him box, right?
You know, Jack, I had nights where he frustrated me, and other nights I liked him. But I'll say this. Pernell he had one of the best jabs I've seen. And when he sat down on his punches and wanted to, he could cut loose a little bit.
Yeah, but Shakur Stevenson's style is based on being able to shut an opponent down. That's basically not beat him up, shut him down, that he's ineffective in the attack against Shakur. And he did it against Padley. I mean, Padley was of a lower level. It's understood, but
at 4 days' notice too. I want to see Shakur. Let me see him fight Tank.
His hands have been bothering him, according to what we hear with Shakur. So it's easy for us to comment on the outside, but we don't know what he's feeling, if his hands are hurting him and he doesn't really want to open up all out and wants to do just enough. We don't know.
But what's going to happen when he fights Tank, Jack?
Well,
he better have good hands that night.
Well, Tank has been reluctant to make the fight happen. He's always putting down Shakur. He even posted the word, LOL, while Shakur's fight was going on. If the guy is so bad, he's this, he's that, why doesn't Tank fight him? That's what I don't like about the man.
You think if Tank called him out, you think Shakur would fight him?
Oh, Shakur wants to fight the worst way because Shakur has a hard time getting a big fight. And Shakur's already said, I know I'm going to get less money than Tank, but let's sit down and negotiate and see where it takes us. That's a very healthy view.
Well, then Shakur better he better show up at Tank's fight and pull a Mosley and get in the ring and challenge him and get the fans talking about it and wanting it.
If Tank called Shador and they went to a diner, and Terrence Crawford was there with his buddy Shakur, and they all talked, saying, look, let's make this fight happen. And Tank said, this is what I'm going to do. 70-30 split my favor. But then he says to Shakur, but if you beat me, young man, you're the biggest name in boxing. 70-30 split my favor. we'll have a rematch clause, and the rematch will be 50-50 or whatever. I think Shakur definitely takes the fight. I don't think he turns it down, because 30% against Tank Davis is going to be more than he can make with anyone else, and he's given an opportunity to get the big fight he craves.
Well, Tank fights this coming weekend against Lamont Roach. Shakur should be there and start the noise.
Well, yeah. Well, it's at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, and Shakur lives in Newark, so it's relatively close.
Well, he should be there, Jack, and he should start the noise if he really wants to fight.
What's going to be interesting, too, I don't know how ticket sales are going, whether they sell out the Barclays Center, because I'll admit, I went to Tank's fight against Raleigh Romero at the Barclays Center, and when I got there, I was astonished it was sold out. And I'm saying, darn it, Tank Davis is entering Mayweather territory as far as being an attraction. You mentioned, I think it's all image, Frank. Mayweather was a boring fighter who hardly ever got a stop. He went like 8 years. It's all about image.
Mayweather had the personality, and all he had to say was, nobody has beat me. Who has beat me? And that was his selling. That was his tool. So, all right, we both know Tank is going to win this week. Jack, today is the birthday of a guy who you liked very much.
Yeah.
And that is former WBA champ, Cool Jimmy Ellis, or Pretty Jimmy Ellis, or Smooth Jimmy Ellis, whatever he went by on certain nights. He would have been 85 years old today. And I have to admit, Jack, Jimmy was a guy I always liked and rooted for. And when you look at his record, he has some really nice wins too.
Yeah, you talked a little while ago about Terrence Crawford moving up in weight. People forget Jimmy Ellis was a middleweight, a good part of his career. And he lost 5 fights as a middleweight, all by decision. But he fought some outstanding guys like
Ollie Mims, George Benton,
guys like that. So he was matched tough when he was inexperienced, and he was mainly known as Ali's sparring partner. He was Ali's boyhood friend from Louisville. Okay, they went to the same school. Reportedly, they split 2 fights as amateurs, 1 apiece. Reportedly, who knows for sure with these smoker shows. Ali didn't seem to be the type of guy that, let's say he fought Ellis once, and everyone said they split 2 fights. Ali seemed to be the type of guy who wouldn't say, no, he never beat me. He probably said, nah, let Jimmy have a plug. He could use it. That's the feeling you get. And of course, we see the pictures of Ali getting knocked down against Ellis, and we don't know whether Ali flopped to make Ellis look good in the gym or whether they were legitimate. But again, we really care that much what goes on in sparring. Okay.
Ali and Ellis fought once he was with Dundee. He fought on a lot of Ali undercards. He scored a big win at light heavyweight over Johnny Pearsall on the Zora Foley card, I believe it was, in 67. Yes.
And
then he moved up. He wins the WBA tournament.
Right. That Pearsall knockout got him into the WBA heavyweight tournament based on that 1 fight. Yeah, and
and then he ends up winning the tournament. And think about this, Jack. He knocked Oscar Bonavena down twice in 12 rounds, something my boy Smokin' Joe couldn't do once in 25 rounds.
Yeah, and it took Ali till the 15th round to finally, nail Bonavena. But, yeah, Jimmy Ellis, some big wins, a real favorite of mine. We saw him not at his greatest moment on that Joe Frazier special. And I guess next to the fight of the century with Ali, would you say the Frazier's first fight with Ellis was him at his best? If you had to pick the best version of Smokin' Joe Frazier in his whole career, what was the best version? Which fight? Was it the Ellis fight or another fight? I never gave that any thought.
Jack, I'm going to say I think it's the first Ali fight, and I would be the first Ellis fight would be second. And the only difference is, and as I said, Dundee even said it during the fight, with Ali. He said Joe's not the slow starter he used to be. He started much quicker against Ali than he did against Ellis.
Yeah, well, that was enough. But but the interesting thing too, people forget Ellis had a rematch with Frazier, and really what Bob was the referee.
Was the referee, right?
And in that, and that was that fight took place in between one of the best performances of Frazier's career, two of the best performances, the Quarry rematch and the Thriller in Manila. That fight was in between. Now, I don't think Frazier was in top shape. He looked a bit pudgy, but regardless, Ellis actually won the first 3 rounds, and Ellis was past his prime. You win the first 3 rounds against Frazier. That's serious business.
Okay? Yeah, that fight went 9 rounds.
And Ellis was never off his feet. It was stopped, the rematch on the cut in the 9th round.
Right. And Jack,
I just want to mention the Joe Frazier special that had taken place because we're talking about Ellis, and we were talking a little before, I think, with George Foreman. Both guys, Foreman and Frazier, were really nice the way they talked about one another. They asked Frazier something to the effect, he said, the 2 biggest mistakes I made in my career was signing the 2 contracts to fight Foreman, that Foreman just wiped them out. No complaints, no anything. And Foreman said something interesting I never heard him address. He said, the guy, Joe Frazier I beat wasn't the Joe Frazier 1971. Had I had that, he lost it something after that. He said, had I fought the Joe Frazier that beat Ali, it would have been a lot tougher fight for me than, that you saw in Kingston.
Jack, Foreman is known for saying some crazy things. But I remember it was, I think, Boxing Illustrated, but I remember Foreman was interviewed after the fight of the century, and he did say, after Frazier defeated Ali, he says, the guy that gets Frazier next is lucky because he's not getting the same guy. And he did go out of his way to say that during that special. You could tell they really respected each other, even though before their 73 fights, there were some hard feelings and bad words. But you could tell they really had a lot of respect for each other. And Jack, all I kept on thinking about during that special was, Joe was such a cool dude.
That's what I'm thinking. Right.
Joe was such a cool dude.
I think the 2 coolest fighters in boxing history, as far as I can see, there are others, but let's say Sugar Ray Robinson was number 1 for being the coolest. Everything he did was flamboyant. Smoking Joe number 2. There were other guys. That we could talk. Jack Johnson was kind of cool the way he did things.
Yes, he was bold.
It depends the era. Certain guys were more flamboyant than.
But I love when they show Joe singing, how much he was into singing, him riding his bikes. The only thing they didn't show that much was what a motorhead he was as far as hot rods and fast cars. He had a hopped up 67 Corvette 427 that they said that he used to tear up Broad Street when he would leave the gym in it. He loved going fast, and he liked the big Cadillacs and Lincolns flying down the road in them, the cycles, the cars. He was a ladies' man. He liked to sing. He liked to dance. He liked to dress. I think Robinson was a little more stylish, but I think Joe might have been a little cooler, but it's close.
Yeah, Sugar Ray had his entourage travel with him. He had his barber travel with him. Who the heck needs a barber to travel with you?
Jack, who was it that said, and this was such a great point, and look, Ali's the reason why I follow boxing and got so into it the night he fought Liston, and he's just such a big personality. It's just impossible not to love him. But
Frank, I don't want to forget because time's going by. A former champion passed away, so maybe you want to lead in with that.
Okay, two-time was it lightweight champ Greg Haugen most noted for his 3-fight series with Vinny Pazienza, fought Camacho and Chavez. I wasn't a big Haugen fan, Jack, but I'll say this. He always came to fight. He was a tough guy. He was limited, but he got, unlike James Toney, he got the most out of his ability. And from what I've read, the tidbits I've read, his life wasn't so great at the end and he had cancer. But you know what? Always gave you his money's worth.
Yeah, the 3 fights that he had with Paz, the first fight, he was the IBF champion, Hagen, and he defended against Paz in Rhode Island, Paz's hometown. It was a very close fight that could go either way. Most people felt that Hagen won the fight. I thought it could have gone either way. 8 rounds to 7. It was a 15 round. 8 rounds to 7 either way.
Right.
Most people did think Hagen deserved the decision, but Paz got the decision in his hometown. And then they had a rematch, and I went to the rematch in Atlantic City, and Hagen won decisively. He won that fight decisively, wide on the judges' scorecards. I think part of Paz's problem was he had difficulty making the lightweight limit. He had no business fighting as a lightweight, and Hagen was a little too strong and good. Then they had the third fight. Neither was a champion, and at that point, they were kind of feuding. Paz actually liked Hagen at one point and thought they developed a close friendship after their second fight. But something about Hagen turned Paz off. So he was no longer Paz's friend. So when they had the third fight, Kevin Rooney was then training Paz, and they changed tactics where Paz boxed Hagen the whole fight.
I remember.
Come into them. But
he clearly won the fight.
He bounced back. He won a close decision over Hector Camacho. Then Camacho won a close decision in the rematch. When Hagen faced Julio Cesar Chavez in Mexico City, he came in like the bad guy, waving the American flag, and wanted to antagonize the crowd to an extent. But what happened, Chavez was too good. He grinded him down and stopped him.
Bad matchup for Hagen because he can't outbox Chavez, and he couldn't trade with him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so Greg Hagen, not a big puncher, good fighter, like you said.
A grinder.
He got the most out of his ability. That's maybe a topic for another time. You look at every fighter most out of their ability. Mac asked me on the show, the Mac and Jack show this morning, to tell me who I think are the most overrated fighters in boxing history. He's the most overrated. And I told him usually the most overrated fighters are the pound for pound greatest of all time, because, we're not underrating them when the guy's at the top of the list. I mean, I can make an argument in some way, shape, or form that an Ali's overrated, a Robinson is overrated. You can't make that argument, but certain fighters like of a much lower level, like a Greg Hagen, you can make an argument. Well, maybe they were a little underrated. I don't know why. It's.
I don't know, Jack. He was pretty limited.
Yeah.
Maybe a Mancini's overrated because he was so popular.
Yeah. I'm not saying, well, Mancini's in the Hall of Fame. Hagen isn't. So a lot has to do with personality, not just accomplishments, So it's not an easy thing to say. I mean, a guy like an Edwin Rosario, was he overrated or underrated? Maybe he was underrated. I mean,
he was really good and had a lot of props until he ran into Chavez that November night of 1987. I remember exactly where I was watching that fight. That's why I remember that.
Chavez was magnificent, yeah.
Jack, I think it's easier to come up with guys who are underrated than overrated. Like if you say, give me guys that are overrated, I have to sit and think. Where if you said, give me underrated guys, I could blow through that.
Yeah, underrated. I could throw an old name from the past like Dick Tiger. And you'd probably say underrated, but at the time, it was highly respected. I mean, it depends on the fight. I mean, in today's fighters, I mean, who do we underrate? Who do we overrate? We mentioned the name Joseph Parker before. We overrating him right now as how good he is, or are we underrating him? Not giving.
See, I would still pick him to lose against Cabal and against Usyk, and probably Fury if he came back. So I probably underrate Parker.
Underrate him, yeah, exactly. And yeah, Canelo, are we overrating him? Because he's kind of gone a little soft in a way.
Jack, I'll give you real quick before we go. The two guys that are most overrated and underrated. Marciano and Tyson.
Marciano and who else?
And Mike Tyson. They're both underrated in a lot of circles and overrated in other circles.
Jack Dempsey, I could throw that name at. Yeah, we'll touch on it again maybe next week, Frank.
All right, Jack. Great show. Thanks for everybody watching, and we'll see you next week.